Welcome, everybody. We are live on YouTube and Facebook. And I am sitting here with Pat Ford, the man, the myth, the legend of every kind of information that was broadcasted for the Libertarian National Party. And welcome to the Lunatic Libertarian. Pat, how you doing tonight?
Great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Oh, trust me, the honor is mine. For somebody that actually has all the experience in the world when it comes to delivering a message. Trust me, I've listened to your podcast. I love them, and I think it's great.
No, thank you.
So let everybody know your history that has not met you or heard your podcast, and then we'll go from there as far as what we need to do to get the libertarian message out nationally.
Sure. Well, my name is Pat Ford, and like most folks, I've been a libertarian all my life. Like a lot of folks, it took me a while to figure it out. I became active in the libertarian movement in the onset of the first Gary Johnson campaign. The story's kind of funny. I've been a political activist for years. I've always been small government, always personal freedom, also always self-autonomy. And I'm driving along one night, and it's in northern Massachusetts, and there's this great show. It's a station called WBZ AM 1030, and I am not, if nothing, a creation of AM radio. I love AM radio, and I love AM talk radio. And so I'm listening, and I believe the show is Nightside, which is this incredible show that covers about 33 states. It's a super station out of Boston, and I had my moniker. I was Pat from Pat from Watertown, or Pat from Boston, even though I don't live there. And I've known to the host as sort of a serial frequent caller, and he knew how I stand on government. So he had a guest on, and he said to me, "Well, listen, Pat, thanks for calling in. There's someone, I'd like you to meet. He represents small government, personal freedom, freedom of choice, body autonomy, and he's running for the presidency of the United States. His name is Gary Johnson." And here I am, 10, 12 years later, 11 years later, pretty enmeshed, embedded, if you will, in the libertarian movement. And it's funny how things happen. Not saying I wouldn't have found the LP eventually, but that certainly started the engines. And like most folks, I've had a libertarian journey from them. I've always admired Gary Johnson. I have veered to the point where I am a hardcore radical libertarian. One would say bridging on nearly anarchistic, somewhere between minarchist and anarchist. And I don't want to mince words tonight. And as I don't mince words, I think that's how you and I first met. I've got very strong feelings on the subject. After that, I became involved with I live in Rhode Island, with the Rhode Island Libertarian Party, which had largely gone dark. And a team of us sort of coalesced from a variety of different campaigns and backgrounds. And it was a team. A guy named Mike Rinaldi, Billy Hunt, John Fennessy, a whole bunch of folks came together from a variety of sources, and we decided to turn the lights back on in Rhode Island. And until recently, very much the public face. I served as chair for about 6 years or so, essentially messaging on the libertarian movement in one of the bluest states in America, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week on a variety of media sources, using every bit of earned media that I could get to introduce what you and I would consider very straightforward concepts, but are somewhat revolutionary here in Little Rhode Island, which is ironic because despite what those folks in Massachusetts say, Rhode Island is the birthplace of the American Revolution. We'll be celebrating the 250th anniversary of the burning of the HMS Gaspee this summer, which predates some skirmish they had somewhere in Boston by a couple of years. There was some nonsense on a hill somewhere, but we were the first. And Rhode Island is the birthplace of religious liberty. The lively experiment, as it was called by Roger Williams, who came to the United States, what was then the Massachusetts Bay Colonies, happened here in Rhode Island. And in fact, there is a First Baptist Church in America. It's on College Hill near Brown University in the Rhode Island School of Design. And there's also the oldest Jewish temple in America is over in Newport. So this is an astonishing place with an astonishing history that has sadly over the last few generations become a sort of a testament to the failure of the collectivist socialist movement, because it's a state that was once one of the mightiest in terms of trade, that is literally on its knees, subservient to, if you will, being on the teat of the federal government. So it's an intriguing time, and it's an intriguing place, and of course that's just part of the fabric of the libertarian challenge generally, that I'm very proud to be a part of. I like to refer to myself as unapologetically libertarian. I will never make excuses for our belief systems. I will explain them. I will message them aggressively, and I will have both answers and solutions to every issue that I attack. I spent a lot of time in our General Assembly. My day job now, is sort of a refugee from the Rona. I sold commercial trucks for 19 years, and at some point when we meet, we're going to have a conversation about the Ford 6.4 liter diesel engine, a true abomination from International, and the morphing of Ford into a somewhat successful diesel engine technology company. It's my day job now because I sold commercial trucks for 19 years, and well, there's no trucks to sell anymore. I took what had been a podcast of mine, a weekly podcast that I was on the air for about 8 years with, called the Coalition Radio Network. And, for the time being, we have a small studio in Providence, Rhode Island, where we do a lot of live remotes from. And then during the day, I'm a fully credentialed reporter for my show with access to both federal, state, and local events. And I'm on the press line now. So when you go to an event and you see those row of cameras, I'm usually standing right next to the guy from NBC. And it's a rather unique position. I think there's only a few of us in the nation who are actively engaged full time, not just in presenting media, but actually being part of the press corps. And it's more fun than you can ever imagine. I get
Actually,
to ask.
I know this. I know this by the experience with this podcast. I know this. It's been great because it's experiences that you don't normally get.
Mm-hmm.
We have people all across this country that are similar minded, like minded people, and to engage those individuals. And by the way, from Providence, Rhode Island, you have probably one of the best fighters in the world from Boo Boo Andrade, who's been a WBO world champion of multiple weight classes from 154 to 160, and then he's trying to go to 168, I'm sure, to chase after Canelo. But as far as excellence is concerned, do you think that the Libertarian Party has the most excellent public policies that can be presented to the American public as what we have in this current situation in 2022?
Absolutely. We have one advantage that no one else in the political arena has, and it's a very simple and straightforward one. We're right. We need to remember that we are right on literally everything. We've predicted and been anticipated most of the significant political movements of the last 20 or so years, everything from the success of marriage equality to a burgeoning anti-war movement that's survived groups like Code Pink and all the other groups that come and go based on who happens to be in the White House and how complicit they are with their own Democratic Party. So we are right on the war. We are right on inflation. We are right on the Rona. We are right on everything, which is why I'm exhausted by a libertarian party that feels they need to water down their message so that they don't offend anyone. I'm offended by the impact on our communities from the corona virus and the government response for that. I'm mortally offended. I'm mortally offended by this notion that none of the behavior of government, both Republican and Democrat. I had a United States congressman tell me a year ago, and I have the video, saying that none of their movements, none of the Build Back Better bull bleep from Biden would have any impact on inflation. I'm offended by the fact that they would conflate.
Hold on. Wait. You have a video of a sitting person that's on our government federally.
Mm-hmm.
That we can if you want to release that video, bleep out his face, and we can blur his voice.
I'm media. I don't have to, the fun thing is I don't have to bleep out his face. All this is done. Everything I do is with consent. I have a video of of me asking the head of the Armed Services Committee in the United States Senate whether or not there was any American complicity in the assassination recently of a Haitian president. And when we found out a few weeks later that, in fact, two of the assassins were trained at Fort Benning, I asked him on the record in front of a group of people on camera whether it was still the standing policy of the American government to train future assassins. It's all good. The media in this country, another subject, we can go there in a bit, but the media in this country is not so much biased as I find them lazy and unwilling to confront hard issues with hard questions. So it's that's a whole other subject. But yeah, no, I've got a backlog of media. I go to the best riots in Rhode Island. I march in them usually. I cover them from within the protest lines and the police lines. It's an adventure right now. The world's on fire. But to get back to your point, we are right, and it's just a failure in leadership in the Libertarian Party as to why we are not part of the American conversation, because we are not, and that's at this point is incredibly disappointing to me, and that's putting.
Well, one thing I want to present to you is that with Spike Cohen and what he has presented to the Libertarian Party nationally with the 2020 run, I will tell you, I have met people and interacted with them and thought they were Republicans, and straight up told me when I handed them my straight up Lunatic Libertarian card, which you can see right up at the upper right hand corner of your screen, that was designed by one great individual, and I want to bring her up, is Kelsey Lyons designed this logo for the Lunatic Libertarian, and I appreciate her always. I give her a plug all the time, even though I paid her, she still designed it. So, the one thing that it is, I interacted with the Marine who wanted to join the Army again, and I was like, why the fuck are you joining the Army again? He's like, oh, well, the government benefits. Yeah, the benefits don't outweigh the cost, but that's another subject. The thing is that, yeah, they voted for Spike. They voted for Joe. I think that these are the people that stood their ground in their political ideology finally. I always ask libertarians, what are you afraid of? And, well, we have a duopoly. There's nothing we can do anyway. No. What are you afraid of? Is the one question I ask everybody, because I had an interview that was canceled just because a person didn't want to go actually on camera to state their values and convictions. And I'm not going to do anything else but just mention that I had a interview that was canceled. The thing is that we need to stand on our values, our convictions, and like you said, be unapologetic as a libertarian. So I completely agree with that ideology. I've watched your podcast. I've studied you. Yeah, I've seen what you've done. And the thing is that I don't see anything wrong with the message that's being broadcasted. So as an ideological thing for other human beings that actually you interact with every single day, when you don't even think about it, like your cashier at your local grocery store or anything like that, most people want to be free. And when we can touch just on that, and I grew up in the inner city, I joined the military, I thought my life was destitute, I went to jail, I'm a felon, I got all kinds of problems as far as what could hold me down, but I'm a very successful master diesel technician. And my skill sets put me above everybody else, no matter what the background is and whatever the stigma is to those labels, titles, and categories. So when I talk to people, I like to talk about being a human being first. Fuck being a libertarian, fuck being a Democrat, Republican. Are you a human being, and do you like to survive? And do you like to have a little bit of success attached to your legacy in this timeline of life? And everybody's like, yes. So how do you address people on a very nuanced sense as a libertarian without bashing them with political ideology?
I think the way you do that, and by the way, I was privileged to work on the Spike and Joe campaign. I handled media for New England and a tiny bit of New York, and we enjoyed some great successes in New England with media, getting Spike and Joe intimately involved with organizations like the Boston Globe and that Superstation I talked about, and some big honking NPR chains, which was an adventure, as well as independent media. So we got, because we assume nothing, and we don't assume ever that the media is not going to want to hear from us, we get people out there and we book them and we get them on the airwaves. But to your question, in practice, it's actually fairly straightforward. You address the issues, you put on your listening ears, and you get a sense of the issues that matter to people on a local basis. You'll hear me talk about candidates addressing lunch pail issues. Now, I'm a fan of Austrian economics. However, I'm not going to campaign based on that, particularly for a local office. If I was running for a federal office, I would certainly introduce it into the conversation. But on a local basis, it's all about how education is working, or not in most cases, how education is financed, how what's happening, in terms of property taxes, what's happening in terms of economic development in your town, the barriers to it, union contracts at schools. These are all things that matter to people on a daily basis. And what you simply do is, and in practice, in fact, we joke about it in Rhode Island, when candidates go out, we don't have to really think about how we're going to posture on an issue, because we look at everything through a libertarian prism. So if you ask me about education, and I like to bold messaging, I'm on TV on several times, I've used a message that I want to end public education. I don't dance around it and talk about charters. No, I want to end public education. Now, it's not like flipping on and off a light switch, but I've got a solution and a path to ending public education that will quickly turn around the quality of education for our children, regardless of their economic background. I refer to schools in Rhode Island as nothing less than an educational holocaust. So I'm not afraid of mixing words and bringing some fairly bold metaphors into it, because it is a holocaust. We've lost generations of children in Rhode Island and across the nation to what Arvin and Vora would refer to as theft schools. And it's simply not working. So you discuss that with people, and eventually people, well, in my case, in Rhode Island, I'm known as a libertarian. Rhode Island is a very interesting place. It's a small, tiny state, so everybody knows everybody, and I'm known as a libertarian. I'm kind of the poster boy for it after 8+ years of being in the public eye and representing it. By the way, the new chair of the Rhode Island Party, Billy Hunt's doing a great job. He'll be in Reno. He'll be running our delegation. I'll be in Reno as a Rhode Island delegate, as well as someone competing for office. But you have conversations with people. There's a step you go through in sales when you've been in sales as long as I have. And the first issue is to acknowledge when you're discussing with a prospective voter or someone you're trying to sell something to, you acknowledge their problem, you establish empathy with them about that issue. You then talk about solutions. You focus on the problem, you analyze the problem, then you focus on solutions. You have to have solutions, and the solution should always be libertarian.
Yeah, well, it's always, where does the ground hit the road, and where do the feet hit the pavement? And when you talk to people about where their barricades are, it always ends up being in government, and it always ends up being in some licensing thing or some kind of permit thing or one thing or the other. The thing is that government should not be implemented in any aspect of our individual life in its daily routine.
Right. Agreed.
No matter who you are and no matter what socioeconomic background you come from. And that's one thing that you and I completely agree. Most people think those are lunatic ideas, though, and that's why I chose that name. It's a lunatic idea because once the full moon comes out and shows you what the darkness is hiding, that's what creates somebody that can be a little bit like, well, you told me there were goons and goblins out there before. Now I see that there's only muskrats and rodents. So maybe the hunt's better at night. And that's why the lunatic actual name was created. And I had somebody in the comments before was like, oh, lunatic, it means this. No. It's illumination on your mind when everything is supposed to be dark. And trust me, you'll be enlightened once you start following a mindset that is for your own prosperity. And I think the libertarian ideology and their public policy is great for that.
Yeah, no, it is. And it's disappointing that we haven't embraced it more. It's disappointing that a lot of our leaders, and I'm not talking about Spike, and obviously, Spike is the consummate libertarian. or even Joe, who, in a very plain-spoken way, raised a number of issues that were very provocative during the campaign,
But who
particularly
speaks
her
better
anti-war
to the
stance.
public is the difference between those two.
I'm sorry.
I said it's those that speak to the common public is the difference between those two,
Right,
with Joe and Spike.
right. So for too long, the Libertarian Party has embraced this sort of Bill Weld, um, this sort of liberty light approach, because the general consensus, and I've sat in LNC meetings and heard people say this, general consensus was that we don't want to scare off voters. Well, to that I say balderdash. That's polite for something else. There are millions of Americans who agree with us already. And rather than try and convert, I'll use an analogy. A lot of times, an employer on a technical, and you've seen this, when you're turning a wrench, there's a lot of employers who want to be your first employer because they want to train you, in a sense, in the workplace in the right way. If you're an athlete, they want to get someone who's kind of raw and hasn't been coached improperly. I would rather us focus our efforts, for example, on the tens of thousands of American veterans who have lived literally right in the eye of an incompetent, ill-equipped government that was quite eager to trade their lives for nothing related to liberty. I would much rather have young people who are screaming out about this constant invasion in their lives and who haven't pledged oath to the Republican Party. I'd much rather have sort of the raw clay, if you will, of folks who agree with us. And what we should be trying to do is put into words for them that which they've been trying to put into words for themselves, for lack of a better term, and haven't found it. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to folks who you literally see the light bulb go on. They get excited because they agree with us. They're just astonished to find a national organization that should be aggressively messaging that which we all agree on. There's an old Saturday Night Live skit. They talked about it was W. Bush, the senior Bush, and the tagline was, "Wouldn't be prudent, wouldn't be prudent. Doing something aggressive to help the economy wouldn't be prudent." And that's the kind of mealy mouth, milk toast approach to liberty that's taken place nationally from the National Party for a number of years now. And when they talk a
Yeah,
great
but
game,
we
I'm sorry,
can
go
go
ahead.
back all the way. We can go all the way back to Lyndon B. Johnson with him with his, I believe it was a Harvard speech in 60. What was it? 68. Those that control the weather control the world. Um, we can go all the way back to when the Federal Reserve was instituted, also. And
Mm-hmm.
as far as my libertarian views, when we talk about people like Margaret Sanger with Planned Parenthood, when we talk about Henry Anslinger with the war against drugs, the very first drug
Mm-hmm.
czar, we are talking about implementation of public policy that was meant to create a hierarchy of people, and there was not supposed to be that hierarchy anymore. But yet again, there was two world wars that were fought in the midst of that, and yet again, we have secularized ourselves to now we're getting to the point of singularity, I believe. I think our public policy goes back to the Constitution, where we need to talk to each other as human beings. There's nothing inferior or dominating. There is only a human being nuance that you and I both need to breathe oxygen to survive. We both need to be skilled in order to provide for our families, as whether it's a knowledge set or you're trading your skills and knowledge for your goods and resources. We can get into that later. The thing is that where does the conversation start? Do you talk to somebody as a human being? As far as, I don't care what your religion is, according to the Constitution, you have the freedom of religion. I don't care what your skin color is. We all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Where does that conversation actually start? As libertarians talk to people when they're getting like signatures or anything like that, because I want to promote everything to actually bring the Libertarian Party to the forefront for the American public.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If the conversation starts, let's just say you're at an event, you're getting ballot access, you're getting signatures. Um, it's interesting because depending on the environment, you might be you're in New York right now. It's all about getting massive quantities of signatures. On the other hand, if it's a lower key event, say you're running for local office, you need 100 signatures. The best question in the world is to say, ma'am, sir, what's important to you right now in terms of your relationship with government? What's important to you locally in terms of politics? What issues matter to you? And very often, those folks will be so astonished that someone isn't so self-absorbed as to only be out there promoting themselves, is that they'll spill guts and they'll go off. Sometimes I've seen people go off on a rampage, and you just sit there and you listen for the key issues. You listen for what the level of emotion, and then you engage, and be schooled enough. And this is important: be schooled enough both in libertarian concepts, but also particularly if you're running, if you're a regular libertarian, then just have a conversation. If you're running for office, you need to be up to date in exactly what the local government is doing. That being said, it's all about discussing those common issues that matter to us. Everybody is worried about schools right now. Everybody's worried about the war. So if folks are into talking about local issues, everyone nationally is upset about education from one perspective or another. It could be from a progressive, we need to increase funding to public schools, or it could be folks who are just completely disenchanted with the lack of emphasis on fundamental education in our schools. So just be ready to have a conversation. And quite frankly, the more you do it, you develop your own voice for issues. The important thing is not just simply to use someone else's words, but you develop your own voice. And also the issues that concern you. So it's really a function right now. What we need to be doing is listening, and then having in our I call it jukebox, a set of responses in our own voice, what the libertarian perspective is on those issues. One of the guys who trained me in sales always talked about the jukebox, and if you hit A12, you'd sing a song. So
Hey, Pat.
if you hit B13, you sing another one. And so A12 might be on school choice. B22 might be on property taxes. D45 might be on our support of the Ukraine and the issues challenging there and the perspective of more boots on the ground American soldiers. It could be any one of a number of things. And everyone always, over time, develops their own voice. And when you do that, it's genuine, it's topical, but you're also listening. And then you're responding. Embrace what folks have to say totally, and then have a reasonable conversation. Larry Sharp often talks about planting seeds. He's got a great stick he does on it.
Pat. I got one thing to say. The Lunatic Libertarian needs to take a bathroom break, and I will let Pat continue on, and he can keep going on with what he was saying. I'm just saying that the Lunatic Libertarian also have to bring in the groceries with the wife. She told me I better get my ass downstairs and bring in these groceries. So I'm sorry, but the wife says that the Lunatic Libertarian has a chore to do. I got to go take care of one domestic chore and a physical chore. I'll be right back. Pat, continue on. And I am loving everything that you're saying. Just to let you know.
Absolutely. Well, this is a new one. So if folks are listening or they're concerned or they have issues, just I guess there's a chat room in StreamYard. Feel free to put something in the chat. But ultimately, we need not to tailor the content of our message. We need not to apologize for our beliefs. What we need to do is tailor the conversation towards responding to the issues raised by the folks we're speaking with. What does that mean in reality? You don't hit them with a pre-canned, pre-programmed stump speech. Larry Sharp talks about planting the seed. You don't have to win the argument. Not everyone is going to agree with this on every issue. But arguing with them is a way to come to a full stop in terms of the future of any relationship. Merely presenting your beliefs in an unapologetic manner, but in response to the concerns that your questions have elicited, is the way to message with people. And so doing that on a routine basis is how you advance the libertarian message. That's what you do to bring, if you will, solutions to the fore. So it's not a function of lecturing people. Other politicians do that. If you ever listen to Hillary Clinton, when she gets into that slow voice where she's going to say things really slowly so that fools like me can listen and understand in small words so she can lecture us, that's what we have to avoid, while simultaneously avoiding the Trumper-like argument, the dismissal. You stink because you don't believe the way I do right now. No. Become conversant with the issues that matter in your locality. Understand a truly libertarian approach to addressing those issues, and be ready to have solutions. Yeah, I had a radio host tell me once that the solution that I was promoting, or I should say this, the radio host would usually cut me off because he'd say, what are your solutions? What are your solutions? What are your solutions? So finally, I preempted him one time. I said, by the way, Dan, I've got solutions proposed. And, oh, okay. Not exactly what I wanted to hear, but I got it in there. And my solution, as a first step to moving away from public education, was, of course, having the money follow the student. Well, where are they going to go? Well, it's my contention that in a very short period of time, if you effectively monetize education, the free market will reach up and grab the opportunity. They couldn't possibly do that. Really? That's fascinating. If you look at universities, the preponderance of our most successful universities are private. So we've managed to do it in the university space. Well, where will they go? And I was waiting for this one, and I had a joke, and I said, well, they'll go eventually take over the buildings at the public schools that went out of business because they lost their students would go. Or they'll find spaces to open up and conduct a business because they'll be monetized. There'll be a dedicated income flow to them. And that's what happens in American business. Opportunities are created, the market responds. But how will we know? And the response I get so often from folks who are, believe in public education, despite what a thorough failure it is, not just on a philosophical basis, but actually on the delivery of education, they'll throw at me things like, well, how will we know there's equity for minority students if we get away from public education? My response is, well, there isn't any now, so we can't really get much worse. There's absolutely no equity for minority students, particularly in the urban core. Well, how will we ensure that standards?
I lived it.
Yeah,
I lived that. I lived it.
Yeah. The other thing I'll throw at you is, how will we ensure standards are met? Well, we don't meet standards now, but the free market will decide, because once results are become aware, just like any other consumer product, which education is a product, not some deep philosophical religious experience. Once people become aware of the schools that are failures, they will simply take their children, just like to a bad auto mechanic, right? You've worked alongside guys who were just a mess.
And I told them that they were fucking idiots. I told all them guys they were fucking idiots. You don't know what you're doing. Just to understand where my perspective is as far as the technician field is, I own 3 lab scopes, 3 of them. I own scan tools for heavy duty and also for OBD2 to cover all the manufacturers. Yep. These 2 tools cost me over $15,000 a year to maintain.
Yep.
As a private citizen to do a job.
Right.
So the $15,000 a year. So if you take in the fact that let's say I make $80,000 a year as one of the best diesel technicians, I think, in the entire country. But COVID shut down the state competition. I went to the 2019 state competition, and I took 2 stations. I should have took 4, but no, when it comes to actual practice of your knowledge and your skill sets, people don't understand what this stuff actually costs other human beings to provide these services. So as a diesel technician, where there are no unions, there are not group protection agencies, we'll say, for that particular group. Let's say Black Lives Matter or the Republican Party or the Libertarian Party. These are groups, and we can agree on that. To push an agenda to say that maybe the policies that are in place do not make equity across the board for everybody. So when we talk about putting things into perspective for certain individuals, one thing I always tell a consumer is that nobody understands what the cost is of actually maintaining a vehicle to the manufacturer's standards,
Right.
to the book, to the letter.
Mm-hmm.
50,000 miles? Oh, you need all new suspension components. The people look at you like, what? No, my stuff drives fine. No.
They look like it's amazing because vehicles now, you can spend $70,000 to $80,000 on an F-350 diesel in the blink of an eye, and it's a tool. And people will look at you, or they'll look at the service writer, or they'll look at the mechanic and say, "You're scamming me with these service contracts. You're scamming me with these routine maintenances." And yet, these very same people who own a business, if they had, say, a backhoe, or if they had a CNC machine, are fully cognizant of the fact that if they don't maintain it, that it will in fact fail. And yet no one would ever go to a Deere or Caterpillar and say, "Yeah, these service contracts, you're scamming me with this. Your routine maintenance is, yeah, I don't believe I have to do them," because they know what would happen.
We'll bring up John Deere. Let's bring up John Deere because they were fucking the farmers and not releasing the actual protocol to transmit data over their ECUs to actually be able to pull codes out of this equipment, and they were sued by farmers
Mm-hmm.
because it's not protected under the Freedom of Information. John Deere was saying that it's not protected against the Freedom of Information Act or the Right to Repair Act.
Mm-hmm.
So farmers are not going to pay for one sensor going down and saying, well, that one sensor costs $900 and it costs 1 hour of labor. 1 hour of labor is $130. When people that don't understand the economics of actual skilled labor come into the conversation, I always have problems. How would you talk to these individuals to say, hey, I have over $250,000 invested in tools, and I'm still paying on almost $27,000 worth of those tools. Now, I'm a 39-year-old man that does not own his own property. I still rent a home. The overall cost of my rent is $1,570 a month. So, yes, I make a very good living, but again, I don't have assets as far as what people actually think are assets versus what's in my head that will always get me my goods and services. So,
and it's interesting because you'll run into lawyers who understand from their perspective of their legal practice why you have to charge $300 an hour if you want to make a good living. But they'll turn to a car dealership or a mechanic shop and be appalled at the fact that the shop rate, I don't know where the shop rate is with you. I've been out of it for about a year or so now. But shop rates in the Northeast are approaching $120 or so an hour. And they're appalled.
In Wisconsin, we are at $170 plus an hour for shop rates at a dealer.
Yeah, I've been out of it, so it could very well be the case here as well. But they don't understand that, and they don't want to. But once the shoe is on the other foot, and that's a metaphor for the messaging issue that we started talking about. If you have to lay out plainly and unemotionally, you can be passionate about it, but you can't be arrogant about it. And there's a big difference. But at the same time, let's have some truth in messaging. One of the most fundamental concepts of the libertarian movement is free market education. It just is. And so when we hedge our bets about talking about ending public schools, because people might see that as aggressive, or people might see that, or our criticism.
Hold on, I gotta stop you one time, because I always ask people, you have a $1,000 device in the palm of your hand that can access information at an instant You didn't have to go to the library. You didn't have to know the Dewey Decimal System. You
Mhm.
didn't actually have to sit and read books. They were
Mhm.
people that were explaining this shit to you over a video because they spent the time on acquiring the knowledge and skill sets. So what the fuck is your excuse of why you do not have or why you cannot achieve? That's a lunatic idea. Just think about it one time, please.
Absolutely, absolutely. But let me turn the question to you. What, as a libertarian, um, what do you think the Libertarian National Party should be doing moving forward? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the Libertarian National Party should actually have a brigade. This is from a military perspective now, a brigade of individuals that would always get signatures. Now, a fund needs to be put in because these people do not cost cheap money. You are talking about people's time in this lifetime to say, hey, I need you, you, and you. You go out to your individual demographics, explain the libertarian message, and get it done. Now, it will always be the same message when it's always the same people. No matter if you fly them out to Portland or Los Angeles, Florida, it doesn't matter. Now, people need to understand that there will always be some kind of transcendence depending on what demographic you're talking to. But that's where your interactions with your local affiliates will always be present. Hey, this is how you talk to these people. This is how you talk to these people. And when you spread the education around of how you actually engage with the local community, when you're talking about a national message, when you engage the local community, whether it's in Albany, New York, or it's in Tallahassee, Florida, or it's in Nashville, Tennessee, you can always make sure that that communication is always a thread that is woven through this country. And that's one thing that I don't think people really understand is that when this country actually fights under a woven message, say the military, those men, women, and the children that lose their parents and everything that goes along with being in the military. Everybody understands that it is for the person to your left and to your right that they survive, not yourself. And that's one thing that people don't understand is the self-sacrifice to that is an ideology that most people can't actually comprehend and that most people will give their lives for another individual in order to understand that they're more important than myself. It's a self-sacrifice. I go out and maintain trucks to the utmost of my ability to make sure that other people on the road are around that vehicle and are safe, not the actual operator.
Right. And by the way, self-sacrifice and is completely absent from most branches of government at this point, particularly at the leadership level. If you go back to just over the last year or two during the epidemic, the governments were not taking furloughs, they were not cutting salaries, they were not cutting jobs, they were not, you know, some people did work remarkably
They
well.
didn't hurt for anything. Do you think any politician was hurting for a paycheck
No,
during the
the
COVID
true
pandemic? Are
the
you
true
fucking kidding me?
the true 1% in this nation, I contend, is not the billionaires. The true 1% in this nation are the apparatchiks, quislings, and well, useful idiots who manage government and have created this cocoon-like experience where they will never be without money, they will never be without health care. They live in this isolated world where they're not subject to the you know the slings and arrows of fate like ordinary folks like us are. You know, they didn't get their dealership shut down or their mechanic shop shut down like both of us did, for because we were
I
directing them
didn't
to
get
the
shut down. I didn't get shut down. I got a
oh,
libertarian boss
you're
that
lucky.
said, "You want to come to work?" I was like, I will always come to work, regardless of what the fuck is in front of me. And I'm sorry that this video may be demonetized because of my language, but the thing is that I do not fuck around when it comes to my survival or my family survival. I have 3 children and a wife to take care of. I
You're
can
for
die tomorrow.
in
They will
Massachusetts.
survive.
In Massachusetts, where I worked, you were allowed to keep a basic staff of mechanics, but literally the state came in and said you had to shut down your retail sales. So imagine, as you know the business very well, imagine you're a dealer. A lot of folks don't realize that when you're one of these name brand dealers, Dodge, Ford, GM, when those trailer loads of trucks drive down the highway, the minute your yard guy signs for them, that they're yours. And depending on the manufacturer and your status of them, you may have about 30 or 60 days uh, that you're not paying the vig, you're not paying the juice on it, as we say in the business. But once you get past 90 days, in most situations, the dealer is actually paying 1% a month on, again, 30, 40,
Because they
50.
guaranteed what that loan was going to produce for that dealership. That's what people don't understand about the actual business of when
Mhm.
people loan money from a major bank, but that dealership actually, when they sign that contract, they are signing a voucher for the purchaser.
Yep.
And
So
every
you're
salesman knows that now
right.
because of the 2008 fucking housing crash, because that was something that was implemented by fucking law. People don't understand these things. They don't actually understand what is bound by law and what you can be sued for, just like the Lemon Law and everything that applies to any kind of vehicle or
Mhm.
equipment or anything else. And when you implement Tier 5 EPA restrictions on Class 8 trucks, I'm sorry, but it's just like the AC laws. Every AC system leaks. You can ask any technician that works on them, what's the main complaint? Oh, my AC don't work. Hook
Mhm.
gauges, you have no pressure. What happened to it? Is the manufacturer liable? No. But if a technician releases a AC coupler, and just so happens the Schrader valve sticks when he releases it, any refrigerant per the ounce can be fined to that technician.
Yep. Now, in the disclosures you have to do in terms of how much variety of chemicals that came in the door and how they went out is astonishing. I mean, you're I know dealers are more tightly regulated than Superfund sites are. When it comes to anything, you know, anything from brake fluid to transmission fluid to, all the different components of an air conditioning system. People have no idea, and they wonder why it costs $25,000 to buy an Econobox, not even a sophisticated car. They wonder why gasoline prices are so high. They wonder why, how come things cost so much? And yet they are the folks who then go out and vote for and support a government that's out of control. I have seen the enemy, and he is us. And we are, as a nation, not libertarian, but as a nation, responsible for a lot of the great pain that's been inflicted upon us. So you're right. Ultimately, it's an educational process. It has to take place, but it can't take place by mincing words or being apologetic. It has to take place politely but aggressively. And it has to
And
take
in
place with solutions.
reality of what shit is and what it isn't.
Right.
It's reality. I don't live in fantasy land. That's what people always say. Well, it's this and it's that. No, I'm sorry, but I don't live in fantasy land. That doesn't exist to me. I've seen people actually lose their lives by having their entire face disappear in front of me. I am not into the vicinity of fantasy versus reality. You want to play Call of Duty all day? By all means. I lived it. I did it. You wouldn't actually survive it. So the thing is that there is no comparison as far as human beings, as far as what is reality versus what is fantasy. And yet again, we met on Clubhouse,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing that I want to bring up is we met on Clubhouse. There was an actual libertarian Q&A for the hierarchy of the National Party. Do you
Right.
think Republicans and Democrats do that shit? I don't think they do that shit.
No, they don't. And if folks go to Reno and it's their first convention, what they're going to be amazed and
Well,
maybe even shocked by is the fact that how much energy goes into platform committee and how
public
much
disclosure. public disclosure is the one thing that I want to bring up. It's
Sure.
public disclosure in the party. You can go to Clubhouse, a very accessible app, sign up, do whatever you want, say I want to listen to this room or that room, but if you want to look into the libertarian political party nationally or on even local levels, you can actually get into rooms with these individuals that run those government party rooms.
Hmm.
It's not anything that is saying that you're disclosed from. Now, I try to contact Mike Gallagher, who's run against my state chair, Jacob Vandenplas, and nothing. I left my card in the Republican Party of Calumet County, where I live, right in their little dry erase board when I went to the DMV and to renew my license because I was like, yeah, this is $90 that shouldn't go to the government. Just to say
Right.
that I can operate a heavy duty vehicle in which I know front to back more than the operators actually fucking do who drive these things on the road. So the thing is that the ridiculousness of where the knowledge and skill sets really are. I think people need to understand that the Libertarian Party actually has the knowledge and skill sets to get public policy back to the Constitution. You have your Bill of Rights. Read the Bill of Rights. Those are the only laws that need to be applicable. And the state should be out of your life once and for all. If you need a road built, hey, your local community can build that road. I guarantee you can get plenty of people that want to have access to that area. They're going to get shit done to make that area accessible. This is nothing new to the human race in an overall aspect because we have what 10, 15,000 years of actual written history. Come on now, people. This is nothing new. Let's get back to reality. Let's get out of the cell phones. Let's get out of all this bullshit and get back to reality of skill sets of putting in the work and getting stuff done. I'm tired of living on Instagram and Facebook. Let's get back to
Right.
reality. What can you do as a human being to better yourself, not rely on the state? I had one woman in Clubhouse be like, "Well, libertarianism sucks." I said, are you a person that is dependent on the state to survive?" Crickets, crickets.
Yeah, I in my day work, my and by the way, I think you have my old website up there. The website is coalitionradionetwork.com. And depending on in my day job, I report equally on progressive, what I call insurrection, and right of center libertarian insurrection. So my site's not really it's a news site, not really a libertarian site per se. Uh, but it's interesting. Right before I came on tonight, I was accused of being an ultra, I don't know, hyper partisan, by someone from the left, despite the fact that in the last 2 weeks I've covered 6 different protests, 6 political events that were
Well, Pat,
exclusively left of center.
the best
Crazy
way
stuff
to
out there.
approach the left, the best way to approach the left is to say human being, because there is no label, title, or
Mhm.
category. Only human being. It eliminates all arguments on gay, LGBTQ, race, religion. You just say human being to the left. And how do you contribute to your human being society in your inner circle? Are you a detriment or you are a positive? And most people on the left will be like, okay, now I have your attention.
Yeah, no, that's a great approach.
I was a big leftist. I left that shit back when I was 17. I just found out that one of my family members died. They were murdered. And I was just like, okay, well, life happens, you know. When you grow up in the ghetto, and I'm going to tell everybody this, okay? So maybe my sister probably is going to fucking murk me about this, but, when I was 14, my sister had been raped by gunpoint 2 blocks away from my house. And it was during a serial raping that was happening around the Milwaukee transit system. back in 1994. And the thing was is that one boyfriend's face, they broke his entire face in Washington Park. They broke this man's entire skull in,
Hey,
and they made him watch his wife get raped by these men who they were the same men that went around and raped multiple other women. The thing is that the predatory system of people that want to be violent, it should be legal for other individuals that don't want those individuals to be around to say, hey, just like maybe that turkey was out there. This is a lunatic idea now because we have individuals who now want these people around. When it comes to a police policy, where do libertarians stand? This was one of the threads I was reading on the libertarian discussion board on Facebook. Where is public policy as far as police enforcement when it comes to if you have, and this is what I'm going to say now. This is the disclaimer now. Time out. Big time out. You need to listen to this. The public disclaimer is that everybody is a skilled individual of all disciplines of knowledge when it comes to self-defense. Where does it come to a public safety standard that the state needs to get involved? Because if the public education system takes care of that from a very young age to where all discipline of exercise, doesn't matter if it's Jukindo or if it's Taekwondo or if it's Kung Fu or if it's Wing Chun or if it's MMA or if it's boxing. If a person is skilled in self-defense, where does the Libertarian Party reside from there? Where is there a law enforcement that is needed? Because they've already passed the gun laws that say that you have a right to carry a constitutional carry because maybe I'm 5'2", this person's 6'15". Who gives a fuck? They're the biggest person I've ever seen in my life. I was threatened. What makes the equalizer possible as far as the United States citizens? Because the sovereignty of being scared is what is being placated upon as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, no, I hear you. We could probably spend an entire show on criminal justice reform. I don't doubt that for a moment, and I don't doubt for a moment our relationship with um, the community and how we handle, if you will, criminality is probably a separate hour or so on that. I'm very involved in a number of with a great group of people in a number of actual pieces of legislation for criminal justice reform here in Rhode Island, and you know, I'd love to at some point in time get into that conversation with you because it's one of the areas that the movement can find growth. It's one of the areas that we can find growth into communities who traditionally raised up barriers against libertarianism. It's absolutely a place we have to go because of our philosophy. It's absolutely a place we need to be because communities are crying out for leadership that the duopoly continues to ignore. And yet, and again, when I make these statements, it's about the national party, not the affiliates, because most affiliates are doing amazing jobs. But the national party remains quiet, other than to virtue signal occasionally and put up the occasional social media post, but has no presence whatsoever on a national level. In fact,
what do you expect out of Reno?
What do I expect out of Reno?
What do you expect out of Reno?
I'm not sure if I know what I expect. What I hope to see out of Reno will be a complete change in management that supports actual community engagement, that supports bold, provocative messaging on behalf of the movement on a national level, focusing on national issues, and at the same time, a change in management and how we empower affiliates. We need to decentralize the party. We need to start moving power back to the affiliates. Right now, the National Party spends a lot of money. I think the budget for this year coming up is about just under $2 million, and despite the fact that there is a lot of people who work very hard, we have very little to show for it on a national level. We are a party that is nationally irrelevant, and I would like to see, and I believe what will happen out of Reno is that will begin to change.
Well,
Believe
I
that with
don't
all
think
my
we're a
heart.
party that's nationally irrelevant. I really don't think that. I think that the
Well,
money that was spent back in 2020 was something that it was spectacular because it hit so many people. Now, we're talking about 20 years of war, like what I came from. I was
Mhm.
an '01 enlistee. '01.
Right.
So, when you talk about 20 years of people that actually served in these wars, I think on the veteran side, and I don't want to give a special category or label a title, but I think those individuals actually that swore an oath of the Constitution at a very young age and saw the result of that was not a very good thing. And those individuals actually promoted liberty within this country, and those may be the realest libertarians out there. Those may be the people
Oh,
that
absolutely.
get the most
The,
credit.
the,
But
the men, the
I'm
men
not.
and women who are veterans are absolutely the gold standard in many cases for libertarian activism. Absolutely. But in terms of the national party, as far as being part of the national political conversation, we are thoroughly irrelevant. We get no major media coverage. Um, I had to fight tooth and nail, and other
Yeah,
people around the
I
community.
think it's to whose standard. Whose standard? The people. Like again, I said earlier, the people that actually are not afraid to come. I had an interview that they want to come on the platform to promote libertarian ideas because they
Mhm,
were afraid to oust themselves in their own community. The
mhm.
act of being not afraid against the state probably is the biggest libertarian promotion that we can have. Is to not be afraid. Now, it is not to be aggressive as a libertarian policy. That's one thing that people don't understand is that I am not afraid, but I'm not afraid to not be aggressive.
Mhm.
And if we have audio issues, I'm sure the guests will let us know. But the thing
No,
is that
I actually hear you loud and clear. But I want to define that. When I say irrelevant, I'm not talking about the individual efforts of people or what they represent. What I'm talking about is in terms of, and I'll give you an example. It's kind of a minor example, but it in the run up to the Orlando convention, one of the major concerns with having an in-person convention or an element of an in-person convention, what was how would the media react, and would we be considered irresponsible by the media by having what some declared would be one of these cluster events, one of these
who gives a fuck?
right.
Who
But hear
gives
me
a
out.
fuck?
Hear me out. Not only did the media not care, they didn't even cover the convention. Other than I don't remember if we even got C-SPAN. And that shame on me for not knowing that. But the media.
Hey, I trolled the Libertarian Party by just saying, "Hey, there is a bomb scare at this convention.
Mhm.
Somebody wants to blow up the Libertarian Party just because of the simple fact that they want to make sure that everybody is free." I think that probably is the biggest scam that the Libertarian Party can promote for actual freedom. To say that they wanted to blow up this group because they wanted everybody to be free and have the freedom of speech, and they wanted everybody to understand the Constitution and stand on their own merits and not care about what everybody else is doing and be just about themselves. I think that as a person that's been charged with bomb scares and faced almost 15 years of prison time, I think that's probably the easiest way to get national coverage. Trust me.
Well, the I've
It's a
got a
joke, but
I've got
I'm trying, it's a satire, but I think it's funny because they try to face me 15 years with just speaking words. If you were going to speak words to say that people want to be free, they want to you the people that actually go to be canceled or put in jail for that now in today's societies.
the
Oh, oh, looks like we lost him. Hopefully we can get him back. Pat, where'd you go? We must find Pat. We are communicating with Pat. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're having a little bit of technical issues. Oh, we have Pat back.
We have me back. I hit a wrong button there. Sorry about that.
No problem. We can go as long as you need. I'm sorry if we're impeding any other previously set appointments that you have.
Yeah, I've just got to get into a candidate Zoom, but I want to continue the conversation. I think it's a great one, and I don't want to end it here. So if there are panels or things that you're putting together, I'd love to participate in them. I had a great time, and
I'm trying to get panels together for conservatives, libertarians, and Democrats. It's very hard to get people that don't want their ideology opposed, but
Mhm.
I can have up to 10 guests, up to myself, up to 10 guests on this podcast. I invite anybody, everybody, to come to the Lunatic Libertarian and discuss your discourse with everyone. I am not opposed to your human nature, and don't be opposed to mine. I will invite everyone to this stage, and you can be live on the Lunatic Libertarian podcast, YouTube, Facebook, everywhere on the planet, and it's archived. Maybe we can even submit to the actual United States Congress to say this archive actually needs to be implemented into the United States Library of Congress. So it will never be an artifact that will ever be desecrated. It will always be in the history books according to the United States Constitution. So that is one thing that the lunatic libertarian will always fight for is your right to your freedom of speech and everything else. Pat, I know you got a prior obligations. Let everybody know where they can find you, the
Yep.
coalition, everything as far as getting the podcast, the lunatic message, and the libertarian message out there. See that little job? I said the lunatic libertarian, a little thing, but get the libertarian message out there for the people.
Yeah, it's well, my own news site is coalitionradionetwork.com. So we've that the site that you have online right now is just that's our older site. What you're going to get there is we call ourselves outrage porn free civilly disobedient media. So I cover the very aggressive politics of both the right and the left. It's called the coalition because we have people on from virtually we have Marxist Leninists on, we have libertarians on, and just about everything else, except we don't have many Republicans on because I like to make fun of Republicans. But seriously, the point is we push the political envelope all the time. I cover on a daily basis media. I cover governors, senators, news events, and I try to bring to the fore questions that the regular media just refuses to ask. Questions of substance on foreign policy, on prison reform, criminal justice reform, the war on drugs, heavily focused on issues and facts as opposed to the steady stream of I don't know, just nonsense. We call it outrage porn. And outrage porn I define as issues that are emotionally based and really have no import to the body politic, which also simultaneously obscure conversations about significant issues. So it's I'm tired of outrage porn, and and right now the crisis du jour is the formula, infant formula. I bleed for parents who are running into this because of an incompetent government that gets in the way of the free market. but at the same time, the media's obsession over that and Elon Musk, which to the exclusion of the NDAA, to the exclusion of the billions that we're
Fuck
spending in
Elon
arms.
Musk.
Yeah, I mean, there's just we've just got to stop it. Other than that, I am running. I am in line to, if you will, to run for the Region 8 district representative spot. I'd ask for people in my region for their support. They know they can reach me
Well,
at any
what
time with
region do
questions.
you cover? You
Region
cover
8.
Wisconsin?
No, it's sadly no. But but also, if I serve on the LNC now, and if there's, I serve all libertarians. So if there are questions and issues, particularly about some of these crazy membership purges that have taken place in places like Massachusetts and Delaware, reach out to me. I'm on Facebook. You can reach me on Facebook. I don't have a picture of me. I have a button that says I'm already against the next war. And that's the easy way to find, because there's about 1 million Pat Fords out there.
You know
Yeah.
what? I've asked Angela McArdle, I said, would you pay for a boxing ring in Reno at a little small private gym for people to actually hash out their disputes if they were real individuals as real human beings to say, hey, you have a dispute against me. If you really want to settle it, let's have a duel of fisticuffs or whatever your choice of exhibition is, and say that let's handle this as human beings, because if there is a political strife, there will always be some ideological platform that can manipulate somebody's ideology. If you want to talk about actual skill sets of combat between two individuals and who succeeds and who does not, then it will always present a form of who actually has the skills versus who does not. So as a diesel technician, as a person that's performed in the Class 8 truck field from the time I think I joined the military in December 2001, became a young construction mechanic in 2002 February. My mother was diagnosed with brain cancer at 41 when I was in A
Oh,
school. So, and it was by my gangster uncle, Pablo Jr. Rivera, who Pablo Rivera Jr. The motherfucker is a gangster, but he and my other uncle, who was actually 2 years older than my older sister. My grandfather had babies up till he was almost 68. But for people to understand where I come from and what I understand as far as where human beings are, I have the perspective of I've traveled the world. That is not an undisputed fact. I'm a veteran, United States Navy, Seabees. Um, I can prove every aspect of every criminal act that was presented against my family that was actually presented on the fucking news. I can go to every news article that was presented against my family literally, and there's probably about 6 or 7 of them that made the actual local news of somebody either dying or somebody was killed or somebody was maimed. This is not some attribute that I think somebody is should be critiqued on, because I fucking hate the fact that my family's been in the news so much. But when you talk about trauma or anybody's experience in the world, I think that the diversity that I come from is that it's always been one human versus another. That's a
mhm,
very libertarian trait. One human versus another.
mhm.
And when it comes to actual skill sets or people surviving, libertarians want everybody to survive as long as they're doing their fair share. Bernie Sanders is a socialist that says that I can join a commune in a certain day and age, and but then he become a multimillionaire and now he's got 5, 6 houses, and well, every billionaire's got to do this and blah 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 blah.
Right.
Eh, the fact in the pudding is what is I'm 39. Look at me. Do you think I look like I'm 45 with my gray? I asked Jake, who is running in my district as 8th congressional congressman in Wisconsin, and he has more gray hairs than me,
Mhm,
and he's 1 year younger than I am at 38.
mhm.
So the proof is in the pudding right here. My life experience is in this gray. I'm not even 40. So the people that
I wish I
actually
could
have
say
lived
that.
this lifetime that are gray in their 40s, we're the new 50, but we can be the new 70. We can go to 120 if we actually want to do all the modern science that we want to go to. But we just remember, I'm 30, I'm 39, and I probably look like I'm 45 as far as the gray hair and everything, as far as my life experiences.
Mhm.
But I can go into 1,000 life experiences. You know, my aunt passed away at she was I think 50. My grandmother is still alive, but her oldest and her youngest daughter are have passed away.
Oh, that's rough, buddy.
She's 80, and her oldest daughter passed away at 41, and her youngest daughter passed away at almost 50. So yeah, shit
All
gets
right.
hectic out here in these streets. But as far as the libertarian ideology, get out here. Sorry if I'm too loud, but get out here, vote for these libertarian politicians. They're out here to end the duopoly. Get out here, vote for the Libertarian Party because you need to understand that everybody is out here to protect your sovereignty as a human being. You don't want to be vaxxed? That's not anybody in the state's problem to say that whether you're vaxxed or not. You don't want your Department of Education in your life? Educate your own fucking children. You made them, you raise them, you take care of them. Let's get out here and actually take care of our own communities. I don't think the government should be involved in anything other than disputing contracts, whether it's a personal contract over words or anything, but there needs to be honesty, integrity behind individuals nowadays. Everybody wants to hide behind a lie. I don't think that should be out there. I'm the lunatic libertarian. Hey Pat, maybe the coalition actually starts with us. Maybe we can get the libertarian movement out here to everybody else. AMFN, let's get this shit rolling. Get it out here. Pat Ford, I love your last name. I'm a Ford guy. My father actually has a Ford that runs lower than 7 seconds in a quarter mile, and it's a Mustang, all Ford powered. I'm a Ford man. Literally, I will take a picture and post it on this podcast of all the Fords actually in my garages. How much I'm a Ford man. Pat Ford, thank you very much for being on the
Thank you.
Lunatic Libertarian.
Let's do it
I
again.
want to have this conversation again and again and
Yep.
again. Let's make it a weekly thing if we can. A coalition is a thing. I'm the Lunatic Libertarian, Justin Lomness. This is Pat Ford. Stay on for Pat Ford after this broad because I need to talk to you. Pat Ford, Lunatic Libertarian, get out here, get voting, get after your own sovereignty, get after your own skill sets. Be a human being. Take care of your community. Don't fight anybody. Get after your own things. Don't take shit from anybody, but don't take shit from the government. Love you, Lunatic Libertarian.